Call this meeting to order of the Mineral Mining Review Board for the City of Walker. And we will follow the agenda as printed here. So the first item on the agenda is an ongoing review of the sand mine that Dan Schimmel operates on 2301 and 2311 O'Brien Road Southwest. So I think this will be the third meeting we've had for this mine this year. So we've been following a process, and I'm going to ask our staff to help fill in some of the steps that have been taken, including Planning Commission review. Danny has a good presentation that we're going to go through. And then we will take a look at an eventual decision on this mine as we proceed through the meeting. There is a public hearing scheduled, as I hear from Tammy, so we will have a public comment period during this. We are going to continue according to the agenda then. So Dan and Rachel and anyone else who's involved in the field work on this one, why don't you take us through the review up to date with this project?
Okay, I'll use some pictures from Rachel, and Rachel, you can jump in if you want to give any insight on them, but I can run through some other background materials as well if you want me to just jump right into it. So first thing I wanted to do was walk us through the process, the request that we're looking at right now, and then the process that brought us to that request. So the request is to go ahead and begin transforming this site into a reclaimed site with an end-use plan that is a 12-hole golf course. I think it was 13 at one point. In the back section of the existing mines golf course where the mining activity is obviously ongoing. So this is what the end-use plan looks like as proposed. It involves some grading that would not normally be approved for a reclamation plan, so that's one of the things that we're going to look at from a mineral mining acceptability standpoint. What I'm showing right here is just to get you used to the topography. Sometimes it's a little tricky to read these plans, and it might still be after these slides, but this just gives some perspective on a few points where we're looking at the contours as they existed in April of this year compared to what the end use is supposed to look like according to this plan. So here's a section showing from the wetlands area on the west side, a little ways into the site, about halfway into the site. You're going over hole 5 there, which I don't show, but there's a little bit of cut and a little bit of fill. You get into some more dramatic grade changes that we're still expecting as you get to other points of the site. This is on the east end. One of the main points of our discussion earlier in the process was the grading on the east end is going to involve leveling out and bringing that to a 1-on-3 slope all the way to the property line. So where you have a steep drop and some tree cover in that 30-foot do not disturb area, there would be a proposal to bring those trees down and level the grade out a little bit, and then a significant amount of fill in the bottom part of the mine, farther west into the site. And then on the north end, again, more leveling out. This is removing some soil, at least the way that I read this plan. There's going to be some cut on the north end. In this area, the trees would remain as they are now along the property line. One important point of this proposal for the reclamation plan, the mine operator wanted the flexibility to ask for a continuation of some mining activity after the end of the year up to 15,000, 20,000 cubic yards. A big point of our discussion throughout this process has been we need the excavation related to mining to be done by the end of 2018. So that's going to be an important point to talk about and to decide what you as a board want to do with this request, and maybe to get some more information from the mine operator specific to these statements here. We talked about up to 125,000 cubic yards of soil being removed earlier this year, and my understanding is they're not really close to that goal yet, and the idea would be to continue mining as long as they can into the mining season here, and then to have the ability to do some more into the next year. And I think there's been some pretty strong statements for good reason against continuing to excavate, so that we make sure we're progressing toward mine completion, towards the end use plan. And this is all in the context of the long ongoing mine operation that had a lot more excavation completed over the years than was originally proposed. So that's a little bit of context behind that request. So that's the request, is to reclaim the site according to this plan that you see before you, and possibly to continue mining before they get to that point, a little bit into next year. Now, the process this year that led to this point has been assessing conditions of approval related to the renewal of the mining license for 2018, into the planning commission process that we had. So if we take a look back at when this mining operation license was renewed in February, March, the conditions we had in place were, first, let's make sure a reclamation / end use plan goes in front of the planning commission in July 2018. We facilitated that process. They ended up in front of the PC in September of 18, just based on our scheduling constraints, and I think that was actually 9/5/18. So some of the conditions related to how the golf course is going to lay out had to do more with the access driveway, what materials are used on that driveway, the layout of the driveway, establishing the permission to use the driveway and documenting that, transitioning the mining soil erosion permit into more of a reclamation and development permit, and getting a stormwater permit for a small amount of storm pipe proposed inside the golf course. Second condition, make sure the 30-foot do not disturb buffer, especially on the east side of the site, was not disturbed until we were more in this reclamation and use phase, facilitated by the Planning Commission review. They got their conditional approval for the reclamation plan from the PC, but to my understanding, that buffer is still in place now, pending our discussion here. The third condition was that we would hold a preliminary closeout meeting where we assess the reclamation plan and look at next steps. And then if there are waivers from mining standards related to bringing the site more aligned with the development plan that was proposed, as opposed to the more stringent requirements of reclamation, the Mineral Mining Board should look at those. That was originally envisioned to be in September, but that's the meeting we're in right now, because we had the Planning Commission review and then we wanted to have that follow-up meeting. So just that's the way scheduling has worked out, and here we are. This is the preliminary closeout / reclamation plan review meeting, where I encourage the board to look at the leniency from the 5-on-1 slope based on the Planning Commission's approval of the golf course that has as high as 3-on-1 slopes. Leniency on the do not disturb area. I'll just make an editorial comment about that. Staff, and specifically me, had some comments about if there's a way to creatively grade and have some steeper grading, so kind of further into the site, so you can keep that tree line on the east end of the site. My understanding is the developer just does not want to do that, but there are some landscaping ideas he has for that edge. So I think he made a case for that to the Planning Commission, and they accepted that. And then, of course, leniency from over-excavation over the years. I think it's sort of a given and in the record that there's been more mining done than was on the original reclamation plan. So I think that waiver has been kind of verified through our various reviews over the years. And then finally, we should really take this opportunity to establish a condition about the completion of mining excavation, as we have made a lot of statements over the last year about completing that at the end of the year. I encourage the board to take a look at that and put that into a condition, put a timeline condition on that aspect of this review for the completion of mining excavation. So here we're getting into the pictures just to show a little bit of the context of where we've been over the last year. This first series of photos Rachel took on soil erosion inspections, I think oriented from southwest towards the northeast end of the site, right, Rachel? So this was back in April, July. These pictures I took right before we were in the Planning Commission review cycle. Not as good of a perspective there, but this shows where you enter the site, some of the access routes that are taken by mining trucks. August, again, looking towards the northeast end of the site. September, and October 26th was the most recent one. So you can see things starting to level out on the edges there. and kind of a more defined pit floor. But again, I encourage the board to review the waiver items and review the timeline of mining completion. So I gave a model motion. You can take that or leave it and craft your own motion based on your discussion.
Thanks, Dan. Rachel, do you have anything to add?
Not right now. My photos aren't scientific at all. I just wanted to add that. There's a good stockpile on that southwest corner, so I was trying to show the progress in that large area of concern.
Okay. All right, well, why don't we let Mr. Schimmel introduce where he's at and what his request is, and then we can go to the board for comments, and then we'll open the public hearing. So, Mr. Schimmel, you can give us an update?
I have a whole lot to add. We have, towards the end of the year, entered into an agreement with Meekoff, and I didn't have enough sand sold to meet those requirements, and so they shut one of their pits down and moved their operation into our pit. We're substantially closer to what we had projected. I think when I turned it over to them, we were at 60-some thousand yards. I haven't got the latest figures, but they've moved probably 30,000 yards in this last month and a half, and we will also, our sand is very clean. He needs some clean sand to make his sand better, and so the rest of the thought is through the rest of the year, even if they don't go out to construction sites, we hope to mine it. He brings it over to his pit and blends it with his sand. So it appears that we're going to be awfully close. At the time when we submitted that stuff, I projected we were going to be in that 15 to 20,000 cubic yard range. If it continues like it is, like today, there's 8 trucks hauling out of there. We could be less than that. I guess all through our meetings, I've advocated we want to get the pit done. We want to restore next year to the Planning Commission or to the proposed site plan submittal. But if there was some left, could we do that during the restoration plan? So the sand that would be taken out is basically kind of at the entrance of the pit now. So we would be, I don't know, 1,000, 1,200 feet away from our north property line, and then basically in the middle of the pit, both our east and west boundaries, there aren't really any houses within a couple thousand feet or more. So I guess we're progressing. That's what I'm asking. So, through this whole summer, of course, we've been restoring, seeding, sloping, doing some stuff. Some of the stuff has to wait till we actually get the sand out of the pit. But, yeah, we've, the east property line where you showed the March or April picture, we have probably moved to 250, probably 250, 300 feet from that east property line. The area of concern where we didn't meet, and that's kind of what prompted a lot of this, from the 1-on-3 requirements of the in-use plan and the 1-on-5 requirements of the excavation mining operation, is basically, you can see where you have those high trees. It's about 200 and 250 feet. At this time, I guess if we can maintain, I think serve the property better if we could maintain that 30-foot buffer and stay out of that area. The entire property, with the exception of about 250 feet, which you can see is that high spot, is probably where we would need the planning commission, or the in-use plan for 1-on-3 there. And if we did the 1-on-3, 1-on-3.5, we could probably still maintain our 30-foot buffer there also. So I guess, I think we've progressed quite a bit this year, and it appears to me that we should be able to complete our pit this year and then do our restoration as the reclamation plan outlines.
Okay, any preliminary comments, questions for Mr. Schimmel?
So you're looking at the end of the year to end your mining operation?
Pardon me?
You're looking at the end of this year to end your mining operation?
Well, that's the intent if we, but the but being if there's a substantial amount of sand, and I'm saying, you know, in that 15 to 20,000 yards, we would like to be able to do that during the restoration period. So it wouldn't end. I guess I could live with a window, say, well, you got to have it out of there by June or something like that, or May. I don't think that would be something that would be burdensome. But there is, I mean, we still got, well, probably a big month. And if we get some decent weather and I can convince Meekoff to buy the rest, that's certainly what I want to do, Dan. I'd just soon be done with it. And, I mean, doing it, you know, there's still noise, there's still trucks, there's still banging. It's probably not as noticeable this time of year because of people have their windows and stuff like that shut. But I guess we're going to do whatever we can to minimize what we have left.
Comments?
I just have one question with regards to the amount of material taken out. You had 60,000 yards were taken out over the summer, and then another 130,000 have been, okay, I missed out.
We have we had 102, basically, we said we were going to try, when we submitted our extraction plan for this year, we had 125,000 yards that were going to try and come out. We were, at the end of October, at about 60-some thousand yards, so we had about 60-some thousand yards to take out. When Meekoff took over about a month ago, since that time, we've moved about 30,000. He is committed to take 25 to 30,000 into his other pit, and so I guess that's what we're hoping to get to, and depending on weather, we should be able to do that, so.
No, that's fine. I misheard you. I thought you said you had 130,000 that they took
no,
out,
no.
so I was like, okay.
No, we're still on the original 125.
Okay.
Well, I think as we move into the reclamation stage, and the reclamation is not gonna be mineral mining reclamation, it's gonna be site development reclamation, I'd like to see the mining ceased, because I know we've talked about, you said one more window, we've gone through a lot of windows. We're like a SWAT team, we've gone through so many windows here, and if we're gonna be getting into the buffer area and changing the dynamic of this, it'd be nice to not see more trucks coming in and out, which is what you get with the mining being extended, because they bring material in to dump, take good material out. I think that's where we need to kind of close the door here pretty quick. Just one opinion, though, that's just my opinion.
I agree with that.
I think to stay consistent with what we've done in the past, I'm thinking of the homeowner down there too. Allowing mineral mining without a license isn't something that we've done in the past. I was also trying to think back to Trick Pit, because that was the one closeout that I've been through. And kind of how we did that, because I know we did this closeout about halfway through the mineral mining permit year, and I can't quite remember how we worded that.
Because of the window with the February deadline for activity in 19, and the way the code is written, I think we're in a little different spot than the Trick Pit here,
Okay,
especially with what we've talked about already this year, as far as ending the mining activity on 12/31/18.
okay.
And then the permit for 19 would be, per the code, to close the mine out. So,
That's, okay, and that's what we did with Trick Pit. That
Yep.
was,
So if 19 was purely reclamation, and that reclamation took the shape of development, which we said at the planning commission was okay, then, Mark and I would follow up towards the end of 19 to do what's required in the ordinance, which is, I think, a DPW director, city engineer, site visit, walkthrough, and then report back to CDD about whether it's been complied with.
Yep.
And that still seems reasonable, as long as it's reclamation.
and based on the submittal, it was, I think they said 125,000 cubic yards of cut and fill on the site to do the reclamation plan, to meet those contours. I'm pretty sure I saw that on there.
It was 125,000 yards of cut.
And fill, though, that's what.
Well,
I think it was gonna take more than that.
There's more fill than that.
Yeah,
I'm not so sure I trust the contours that are on here anymore either. There's been a lot of changes. We don't know what state the existing is way off. The proposed, I think we're hearing, might be off.
okay.
We really should get this updated at the February review as well, so that it's current.
That's a good condition to mark down. Well, before we get too far, why don't we open the public hearing? Got a couple of folks here who I think have a few questions, so I would look for a motion to open the public hearing.
I'll make the motion.
Support?
I'll support.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, public hearing is open. Feel free to come on up to the podium if you would. And if you're willing, if you could give your name and address, and we'll see how we can get your questions answered here.
My name is James Schock. I live at 47 Skyline Circle, northwest Grand Rapids, Michigan, which makes me a neighbor of the proposed 13-hole golf course. I can see that progress is being made, and I can see lots of traffic with trucks coming in and out, more so recently, which means there must be a lot of demand for good sand. And I can see that the digging is mostly in the middle of the proposed development, which I think is probably a good thing. And I've seen, and I don't know exactly what the ratio is of fill coming in and sand going out. And I think there was a lot more fill coming in early, or this summer and early fall. But, I'm just a casual observer that was interested. We did write, I think, 5 questions down there. And I think the fill might have been the first one.
First question that you have is, where is the fill dirt coming from?
Yes.
So that's a question we'll ask Mr. Schimmel.
And the second one, if you could,
Second question is, where is the sand being taken? Third is, when will trees be planted to buffer between the course and the condos on Skyline Circle? And the fourth is, what is to prevent dirt bikes and snowmobiles from trespassing on the course? So we'll ask Mr. Schimmel to follow up on those.
okay, and if what I hear is correct, the woods that exist now on the east side of the course, towards Koval, sounds like some of those are going to be taken out. I wonder about that. I'm wondering why they would be taken out. And also, it sounds like the activity, and, you know, to make an analogy, to make hay while the sun shines, since there appears to be a big demand, there appears to be a request to extend the time of mining past February to May or June possibly. And we're talking about a project that started in 2006, promised that a golf course would be put in there. I believe that's 13 years. And now there's a request for an extension. And basically, I can see that benefiting the corporation that's selling the sand. Seems like it's had plenty of time to make hay while the sun shines. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for those comments. Ma'am, do you have any comments? Okay. Team effort.
I'm on the Board of Directors for Grosse Pointe Estates condominiums, but I'm not here as an official representative. But we can hear the trucks, and they've been working 6 days a week, even with the windows closed, because in the summer, we have air conditioning, so we keep, and it's not bad, but we just would like to see it end before we die. It's been a long time. And I know Mr. Schimmel's been very cooperative, and, you know, it's gonna be nice, but we'd like to see it sooner than later. That's all I have to say.
Any other public comment before we get a motion to close? Okay, how about a motion to close the public hearing?
Moved.
Support?
I'll support.
Alrighty, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed. Public hearing open and closed. So, Mr. Schimmel, we have a couple of comments for you, if you wouldn't mind answering the questions. Where is the fill coming from? Where is the sand being taken?
The sand, or I'm sorry, the fill is coming from various construction jobs throughout the city. Leonard Street from Wilson to Kinney, bunch of muck and marl coming from one of the city Walker streets. Some came from the new Myers gas station on Walker. Various city jobs, downtown area. There was probably 10 different spots throughout the summer where that various stuff came from. Consequently, sand returned to those spots. Of late, the majority of it's been going to Meekoff. A lot of it's been going to Meekoff so they can use it in their pit and then move it out. I guess that's where it's coming from and where it's been going.
Let's go to
If I
question
remember-
4 before we get to 3 then. What are you doing on site? And I know this is an ongoing challenge for all open properties to prevent trespassing, essentially.
We have people, trying to watch it. I'm there a lot. We have people overlooking it from the maintenance shop who run the golf course, and when we see people there, we know who they are, and they're the adjoining property owners. They live on, I could take it to them, but it doesn't matter. I mean, you tell them to stay off, and
You've got a gate, and you've got orange construction fence around
yeah,
the slopes,
well, they
right?
take the fence down.
But I think as long as you're doing what's
Which is
required.
kind of ironic. This spring, the man who had the loudest complaint is one of the biggest offenders, and he's taken his fence down, and it's basically the high property there. And so I'm as frustrated as the next guy, but the police won't stay there. We do what we can. And, you know, I'm not saying all those people, because, you know, the power lines are accessible from here to Muskegon. And there are some snowmobilers. We try and keep them out of there because there are some areas where they could really hurt themselves. So I wish we could police it better. It is better than it has been.
The last question is specific to the north buffer with Skyline Circle. And I think I know the answer to this, it's probably planning commission related, but when will trees be planted to buffer between the course and the condos?
I guess we've never projected to put trees in that area. We've had a buffer there along or the condos along to the north. I don't know how many years ago when the gas company, and this was mandated because of the terrorism acts, they had to cut all the trees off of the gas line right away in that whole area, which really denuded that whole bank and took, you know, and it wasn't something that we could, I mean, when they started doing it, we said, you know, why are you doing it? And I'm sure, well, they had the right to do it. It wasn't something we could stop, and that took probably, that right-of-way swath is probably 10, 15, 20 feet wide, and they took everything off it. Now, some of the little scrub stuff is coming back, but, you know, that 50-foot buffer that we were to leave the trees there was pretty much taken care of by the gas company.
I remember when that happened, and we had complaints from previous owners in the condos. This goes back quite a ways, and you're right, it was post 9/11. Gas company came in, and they were mandated to make sure there was free access to all of their lines, and that was just, you know, exactly where you didn't want that to happen.
Right.
Is where it happened. Okay. So I think you've answered all four
I
questions.
guess the other question was why take trees down on the east side? Right now, the intention isn't to take all the trees out on the east side. I'm hoping that we can, that steep area, the 250 feet approximately, with the requirement of 1-on-3, which is the provision that we can go through in the in-use plan as opposed to the mining plan. I think we can accomplish that without taking any trees down on the east side. So we're not going to just take all the trees out on the east side because we want to go back to the property line. It's expensive to do, and there's really no need to do it. Like I said before, the buffers and the 1-on-3s, 1-on-5s, with the exception of that 250 feet on the east side, the rest of the property has been reclaimed, and/or there's no reason to take trees down or any more trees on any of that area.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Well, let's have a board discussion on the issue that's in front of us. Really is, Dan's put together a model motion that I think is pretty comprehensive, and it lays it out for us. We've got an issue here about the cessation of mining by the end of 18. That's one issue we need to discuss and clarify. And then also setting up for the February 19th application to restore this site. So why don't we have specific discussion on those two issues, because that'll lead us into a motion.
Well, I think it's important to point out that the plan that was approved by the planning commission does show removal of all the trees on the east buffer. So Dan can try to save some of them, that'd be awesome, but he's allowed to go get them. he's allowed to go right to the property line if we accept that as our reclamation plan.
Which I think is the direction that we gave Mr. Schimmel, go to planning commission and get a golf course plan approved by the planning commission. Planning commission has done that. So to me, we've already got our marching orders on those issues. Unless I hear otherwise.
Mr. Chair, can I just build
Yes,
on
jump
what
in there.
Scott just said? I do wonder, there's just a engineering exercise that's gonna need to be done if there are gonna be trees preserved there, because the way this is designed right now looks like it's a 1-on-3 feathered slope all the way to the property line. So of course, if you're pushing that out farther, so you save the flat area for the trees, then you're gonna have to make a steeper slope further into the site, which might be possible, but it's just something to keep in mind. Some of that 1-on-3 area might move farther west into the site, which might be what Mr. Schimmel was getting.
I think that's where, what Rachel talked about earlier comes into play here. Got a planning commission plan. We've heard some things from Mr. Schimmel today as far as trying to keep that 30-foot buffer intact. Well, then the plans that we've been presented with need to be updated to show that with the February 19th application. Because like Dan just said, it's gonna push that grading line west. Okay, other comments? I'm gonna stick out of the way 1 second, Mr. Schimmel. Let's see what other comments we have from the board.
Just another thing on that east boundary, I would just like to see some detail on how that's, if they're going to be grading right up to that property line, how that's gonna blend into the existing grades and whether or not any grading permits on those properties will be needed. So there's a couple places that they don't quite look like they line up, and it's hard for me to visualize how they come together. And how, yeah, going right up to that property line isn't going to affect adjacent, and that could be handled through potentially soil erosion permit as a part of the restoration plan.
Okay.
So Frank,
Yeah.
it would be February, normal mining permits, February to February. So we're looking at,
Well, it's actually February
March
through.
1st.
Yeah, March 1.
okay. So we're looking at 12/31 to cease this permit, correct?
I think that the first thing that we should get clarified is, how are we going to vote on, will the sand mine extraction be done as of 12/31/18?
Okay.
So that's issue 1.
And then some of that could be when it's time to start excavating for the golf course and you can change your slopes. Then that balancing there of material, I guess I see it as some of that could be taken out and a different material put in its place as part of the balance.
Yeah, see, that's the challenge. I think we need to be really explicit, both for the neighbors and for Mr. Schimmel, about, is sand mining gonna end on December 31st of this year? So that's question 1, and we can vote on that. Question 2 is reclamation, restoration, and that's really the February 19 permit. And we've got a whole section of the code that talks about, here's what you do to formally close out a sand mine. So if we're blending the two together, you know, I think as chair, I would not recommend that we do that. Because then we get into more of, the sand mine continues, and the goal this year has been to close the sand mine out at 12/31. You know, the plans that they presented us with show a balancing of the site to make the golf course happen. I think that's what the planning commission has agreed to, so that's what I would recommend. But I'm one vote.
Right.
Well, I guess the question I'd have is, it seems like we had a lot of discussions as I was reviewing some of the notes about the 125 cubic yards that we were going to allow to take place. So did we allow him, Dan, to take 125,000 cubic yards? Or did we say, here's the end date? And,
It was a blending of the two. 'Cause
yeah.
we had some heartburn about the size, and then we said, all right, if you can get it done by this date, that's fine.
Yeah, there was actually, there was discussion around 150 yards in here at one time, and it looks like it's reasonable to think that there could be 20 to 25,000 yards taken out in a month's time.
That's certainly possible.
But it's all market-driven, or is it gonna be taken over to Meekoff's pit?
It's not totally market-driven,
Because you can take it to Meekoff's pit.
and that's the intent or eventual.
Yeah.
I guess, one of the things that kind of strikes me as odd is everybody else is allowed to do February to March 1. Why are we saying, I gotta be done March? Why am I being restricted to a end of the year? To me, that doesn't make sense, other than what we're trying to achieve on closing this bit out.
I think that's a big part of it. To Mark's comment, we said, we agreed to 125 this year. It sounds like they can get close to 125 by the end of the year.
And I thought that's what maybe Dan was getting at too, was that 125 mark seems like it's achievable. I know December's a short month because of the holidays in there, but, so I didn't know if that made sense to discuss something around the fact that, if we can get to that 125 mark.
Well, I'm sorry, but I'm a business guy. I shouldn't say I'm sorry. I'm allowed to make a living. And I'm sorry what everybody thinks how I should run my business. This is a viable part of the golf course operation and allows me to make my payments, pay people, pay my taxes, all right? I guess I'm a little offended where everybody else thinks they know how to do that better than me. Now, I appreciate this has been an inconvenience to the neighboring, and they've shown remarkable restraint. I'm not saying they don't have a right to have an input, but I also have a right to run a business, and this is my business. People don't like sand pits. People don't like gravel pits. People don't like fill sites. But it's an integral part of what we do in this country and in this city. And when we bought this property, the city of Walker got $5,000 or $6,000 a year in taxes. For the last 15 years, you've been getting somewhere between $40,000 and $55,000 in taxes. How do I pay for all that stuff? I've been able to do that. I think I've been a good neighbor. I think we've been cognizant of what we're trying to do. It did, to accomplish what we're trying to do, didn't come at, it came at a cost. I'm willing to do that because I want to be done with this thing too. I don't intend to take trees down on the east side if I don't have to. But in order to accomplish the setback requirements, we had to go down these dual paths. If we can use the 1-on-3 on that 250, I mean, I don't know how many thousand of feet I have of boarding the property, but it's got to be 4,000 or 5,000 feet. We're talking about 250 feet that I've got a problem with. It's not a big deal. At least it isn't to me. We can accomplish that by doing a 1-on-3. Or if you want me, I will go to the neighbor and tell him this is what we'll do and get a variance. I mean, I'll work in any way we can, but I don't want to be held differently. And this is, I don't want to fight you guys. I don't want to, let's try and get this done. And that's what we were trying to do. The staff and I have been trying to work together to try and figure out a way to be done this year. And I want to do that. We've been working down that pathway. But to say, well, you got to be done 12/31, when everybody else in the pit operation is allowed to do it to March 1. I don't, the 15 or 20,000 yards, that's a fair amount of money for me. Granted, I'm a bad businessman and I'm making money. But that's what I do for a living, I'm sorry.
Well,
I shouldn't be sorry. That's what I do for a living. We do good things also. Anyway, I'm off my soapbox, sorry.
Okay, he's off the soapbox.
can I make a comment?
Yes,
I just, I see where, over the years with the economy going down and everything and coming back and everything. And I asked earlier about the end date of the mining permit and this. And I think, I see it anyways, in my opinion, we're trying to get an end date. And I think some people's understanding of the end of the year was one, and others may have been the mining permit end date. But, can we come to the final terms of an end date? If there's 5,000 yards of sand yet, and we hit that end date, we're done. Is that, I'm not trying to tell you how to run your business, I'm asking, is that a fair assessment of this board? Is what I'm looking for. And
I understand what the responsibility of this board is.
so, to see it progress, we put an end date and have it progress. And that's, I think why Frank, we went to the planning commission before and trying to make steps to make this work, if I see it right. And so I just,
And if I could definitively say we're going to be done and there's only 5,000 yards left, I don't think we would have an issue, all right? And how many pits do we have in this town, this city?
6.
How many of
7.
them are closing down, other than mine? How many of them have had an in-use plan, other than just a restoration plan? From what my hindsight is this is the only pit, other than one we did a couple of years ago for Millennium Park, that when we closed it, we had an in-use. There is no in-use plan for the other pits in this city.
That's not true, Dan.
That's not true.
It is not.
That's not true at all.
We have two others that have very definitive land use plans that are actually getting close to
I'll take it
tapering
back.
out and.
I guess I wasn't aware of it. My bad.
There's only a couple of sites that have very, very limited land use, and that's probably the sites that you've witnessed.
Pardon me?
So there's only a few sites that have limited land use potential. They're the ones over the gypsum mines. Everything else has a land use plan.
Very good. Apologize.
And I'm not sure, thank you for everybody being more experts on this, but one thing that I was thinking, with that, the mineral mining review in February, maybe we could allow mining up into that and make a condition that additional mining will not be approved in March. So to put a formal end where basically make a condition that no more mining would be approved in this in March, and that would be the consequence of not finishing by that date. How do you feel?
Dan was,
I like that idea. I think we need to find a way to transition from one to the other. It's not just about making money on the sand or the additional material to shape. It's about the trucking on a non-truck route. It's about the damage that's being done to the road. It's about us protecting the neighbors. It's about all that kind of stuff too. So as we balance that all together, I'd be okay with that. If somebody was to make a condition, something like that to move forward.
We'll start crafting a condition. We'll get one more comment from Mr. Schim.
regarding, I guess along the lines of Dan, I'd rather not have any special provisions in what you guys are trying to craft. If, instead of trying to craft this today or in the next few days, let me go back to Meekoff and do some calculations and see if he's willing to up that amount so that we can have, I guess I can't get it done from now till the end of the year, but if we could get it so that it ends like everybody else's permit on March 1, that gives me a couple months this winter to move the rest of that material. And if he's willing to do that, I guess that's what I would like to be able to do that. I can find that out relatively quickly. We can do some calculations, and then we could deal directly with the reclamation plan when we come back in February.
If he's not able to do that, would you need,
Pardon me?
are you, so you wanna speak to Meekoff and figure out the numbers? Are you thinking that there's a chance that this would need to go past March 1st to get the rest of the 15
No, I
20?
think we can achieve that 15 or 20,000 yards in that next month and a half, 2 months. I mean, we're going to move a lot this year yet. There are some holidays and stuff involved, but I'm talking about, what I asked was, can we extend the 15 to 20,000 yards into next year? You guys are hesitant to do that, so instead of allowing to do that, instead of quitting 12/31, let my pit operate through normal channels till March 1, and then let me go back to Meekoff and see if in that time we can move the balance, and then we can close it out.
What I was trying to craft was to allow, mining through March 1st, and then make a condition that no more mining would be allowed past that. So basically,
I think we could achieve that,
at
yeah.
the end of that, we'll have a condition that, only a restoration permit would be approved in February, and no
Yep.
more mining would be allowed. So it would have to be done by then.
I
and
think we
nothing
can
else
live
could
with
be
that.
brought out. Okay. But I don't know how the board feels.
But that would be to get to the 125,000.
Yes,
And I'm going off the 15 to 20 that you were referencing. That's what's remaining of that.
correct.
And that would get us through application for February, which would be a close the mine application. No more sand extraction.
We would not approve sand
Unless he-
extraction for,
Yeah, unless he comes in with a completely new application, or not new, but amended application that shows that he wants to just continue to mine more,
Well-
which he has the right to do.
You know,
But I think,
there's a right, but then there's also a reasonable interpretation of the right. And I don't want to get into a protracted argument here, but just for the record, the original application in '05 was for the extraction of 340,000 cubic yards. That's what the city approved. If he goes all the way through and extracts the remainder of this 125, he will have extracted more than 600,000 cubic yards. So that's an additional 260,000 cubic yards over what was originally approved by the city. So I think we also need to act in the best interest of the city of saying there's a reasonable limit to all of these sand mines. So we've done that on Shoemaker, we've done that on the one up on 3 Mile in Bristol, saying, hey, folks, the sand may be 300 feet deep, the mineral is in place, but you cannot turn this into a quarry. There is a reasonable bottom for these mines. And we have gone well beyond the bottom that was originally approved in this mine. So from my standpoint, we have reasonably accommodated a sand mining use on this property. Otherwise, we could just take a look at all of these mines where all that glacial floodplain soil is in the south part of Walker, and the mines could go on forever.
I'm not trying to get you to jump on a soapbox here. I'm
Yeah.
just saying he has a right to ask for anything he wants.
Well,
I don't
that's
think
not
we're
a
gonna give it to him.
That's just the facts.
Right.
You know, the numerical look at this mine over the past 13 plus years.
Over accommodated.
We have over accommodated.
And that's important, because, yeah, I don't know of what our ordinance gives us the ability to do, as far as, yeah, coming back with a new application. But I feel if we are able to restrict approval in February to only restoration, that's that much more accommodation, but there's a harder end to our accommodation, and is a compromise with what Dan needs to do.
I think there's a strength that comes along with approving this reclamation plan, this development plan into the reclamation plan as well.
Yeah.
Because that's a pretty firm approval from both Mineral Mining Review Board and the Planning Commission then, which, kind of reduces the right or the interest of us to look at doing something different here.
I agree.
There was a 1-year hourglass on the planning commission's approval in September, so the initiation of that development plan would have to begin within a year.
And that would dovetail in, if we approve the reclamation plan in February, they would get underway. Reclamation means golf course. Right? That's how we're hoping
My
to
eyes, I
solve
would
it.
say March 1st, they've started on the golf course if they're doing reclamation.
And then we just have a punch list at the end. When Dan says we're done with the reclamation, we go out and then we have a meeting and we officially close the mining activities and reclamation on this site. So that should be fall of 19.
There might be some creative stuff we have to do with the soil erosion permit,
Yeah.
just because it's been tacked on to mineral mining, and so these are approved a little bit differently, like I don't get an application every year.
Sure.
But I think I can work through that after March,
Okay.
once we get into that restoration stage.
Okay. Sounds fair.
Yeah, I think the stormwater permit, the soil erosion permit, all the different planning commission requirements should all kick in as of March 1st, when this would then officially switch from mining to reclamation and development.
And what I heard for Mr. Schimmel's March application was that we need updated contours with the February application. And then we need to see if any grading easements will be necessary for reclamation, also as part of the February 19th application. So consider that when you're crafting a motion.
Chair?
Yes, take it away.
Just a suggested clarification when you're crafting the motion. In my opinion, it would not be too early to look at this issue of waivers from requirements. So if, on the one hand, reclamation won't really begin until February, we can address this at that time. But it may be worth addressing now whether the board is comfortable with steeper than 1 on 5, which the motion here says 1 on 3, but it's steeper than 1 on 5 reclamation slopes, and disturbance to the 30-foot do not disturb buffer area, which sounds like you may be backing away from, and the over excavation beyond the original reclamation plan. So those are 3 waivers that I'd ask the board to consider either now or in February.
I would say let's hit those in February, just because of what I heard being crafted as the motion for right now. And that'll give Mr. Schimmel time to go back and review his reclamation plan about what they're gonna do on that east property line. That'd be my recommendation. But that's why we need updated contours and we need grading easement clarification.
Okay, I gotta ask questions, Frank.
No, fire away.
So if we have a motion to allow Mr. Schimmel to operate to the end of his permit year, can we, or put a request in that motion that we have these contours and everything by a certain date in February before that meeting, so it could be reviewed at that time, and then the application process, if he so deems come in to apply, would be after that, but we've already finished this one with the understanding that it was gonna, operations will cease at the end of this permit.
I think that's a good point, and those should probably be conditions today, just so that we're all operating under the same record of what we're expecting with the February application.
And I guess the reason I present that or ask that is, so then you would know what we're looking at. So your permit takes you to March 1st, but we're gonna request different, your contours and what else do you
That's
want?
pretty standard stuff, just the same stuff they'd have to submit any March 1st application.
Right, but we'd like it prior to, as a part of the condition that this operation would not be renewed after.
And they submit all that stuff in, what, late January, early February?
Okay.
To get in the packets, you guys review it all in advance, make sure
Okay.
it's complete.
So we'd have that.
Yeah, we're in good shape
Okay.
with all that stuff.
Okay.
I think the thing here is to extend the deadline for being able to remove material, which I think we had put some pretty firm dates on last time.
Yep.
With all of the structure that we had with future meeting dates and everything, now we're talking about extending that on.
I was down through there a couple of weeks ago, and I see there's a lot of truck traffic, and it's like, well, there's still a lot of construction going on in parts of the city and whatnot, but if there's a, you know, I can I think the amount of traffic might be due to the coming of the end of the year, but if we can put it at March 1st and with the understanding that that is the end of the year for everybody on the board. That's the end of the permit. And it'd be also an understood date for Dan Schimmel. Fair?
I guess I'm.
Be careful, Dan.
I think what's being stated is what you asked for.
Oh, I guess I couldn't really hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just asking that we make the date March 1st at the end. And it's, everybody on this board and also yourself are under the understanding that this mining operation ceases March 1st of 19.
And, I mean, would it be better if I withdrew my in-use plan?
No.
Would that
You'd have
be
to stay out of the buffer, you'd have to comply with all the rules and regulations.
just,
You could do that anytime. You could walk away and say, I just don't have enough money to build a golf course. So,
but I mean, would that make it easier?
not more palatable.
Let's just, what?
It's not more palatable,
I know.
right?
Not what I wanted, but I mean, would it be easier, would it be a simpler process? I mean, we went down both processes because we thought that might be simpler, but it seems to me that it's starting to complicate things more also.
Well, I wanted to kind of have an open discussion on conditions real quick before putting them formally, but one of the conditions I was gonna propose that I think is a compromise between, is all mining not to exceed 20,000 cubic yards to be completed by March 1st, 2019, ahead of a restoration permit. Is that something that you feel that you can meet, that you can get that 20,000 cubic yards out by March 1st?
Do it by the end of the year, I think I can do it.
Well, that's why I'm saying March 1st, 2019.
I think I can, not think, if that's what, that's gonna make everybody happy, or almost everybody happy. So, I can live with that. That's a simple version, or simple answer, I guess.
Yeah, and if we can do that, that was what I was gonna propose as a condition, so then we get that 20,000 in there, and then no more extensions on mining activity after that.
I think the date is the key because we don't monitor the volumes. You know,
Right, but, that was just a follow-up from that original 125, as kind of what we've been talking about amounts.
I'm losing some of what you guys, I don't hear so good on the low end of that stuff. Too much machine running. I think what you're saying is, let's let's just stay with the March 31 and tell Dan to be done. Is that the short version?
March 1st.
Or March 1st?
Yeah, so at the end of that license for the year, all mining activity is to cease.
I can agree with that.
Okay. And then I was also just working in that 20,000 cubic yards number, because you keep bringing up the 15 to
I
20 is
think,
remaining.
just forget the number and I'm done March 1.
That makes me happier.
Okay.
What?
I said, that makes me happier, Dan, to not have a number. Because when
Let's
Frank
just-
brings up that we've already taken out 600,000 of the 300,000, it starts to make me feel even softer.
I don't
when
want- I don't
we're
wanna
giving
go
more
down that argument.
volume. So if we just go with the date, that seems very fair.
That's fine with me.
Were there any other conditions that we wanted? I had one to provide updated existing contours for the February Mineral Mining Review Board meeting. So the updated existing, so wherever it's at in right now, or what month do we want?
Well, the beauty is that we can craft a lot more conditions in February when we do the normal
Okay.
round of mineral mining review boards, so things
Just
like
wait that.
stormwater, soil erosion, we can
Okay.
get that all covered. It might, I still think it's wise, I defer to Dan, on whether we adopt the golf course development plan now as part of the reclamation plan.
Yeah, I mean, this is just the
It's
grading
approved.
aspect of
Yeah,
the use, yeah.
Well, then let's do it. If planning commission put their stamp on it.
yeah, it's been approved, so it's,
Yeah.
if we don't approve it, we're kind of just standing in the way of that progress.
Well, let's do it.
No, if
So does it
there
make-
is, well, I guess the curveball I would throw is if there's still some flexibility on where the trees are coming down on the east end of the site, that's something that it would be more conservative if he's taking that approach than what the planning commission already approved, which was knocking those trees down. So, maybe we give him the chance to have the flexibility to reshape that grading. I don't think it would go against the planning commission's approval if he saved the trees. But I don't know if we want to box ourselves into here, allowing the 30-foot buffer to go away, if he might be able to work around that.
Well,
Still allowing steeper slopes, and
Yeah,
there's stuff that's happening that we wouldn't normally be doing because we've been loose about it, knowing that this is coming. But that's fine, we can hold that off until we get the adjusted information. It's still within the 1 year. And if you can do an administrative approval to the changes for the planning commission, knowing that they're to a lesser extent, then that should be fine.
yeah. And the only complication I could see is if between now and February, Dan, if you're getting into that tree line, and we should address that now.
Well, if we don't adopt this, then he can't get into that. The buffer's the buffer to protect those residents from the impacts of mining.
just put in there, I stay out of these property.
Buffer to be maintained along the east property line.
That's fine.
So add that condition.
We ready to vote yet?
I hope so.
You know what, though? Dan Kent, to the point you made earlier in one of Rachel's last comments, getting those updated contours and showing how the grades tie in along the east end, that stuff on a plan. I think what we're trying to get more towards is kind of a site plan review process for your mineral mining board meetings, even if it's pretty light and it mostly involves me. But if we can have a pre-submittal, 3-4 weeks before the meeting, so that might be a date you put on the condition that we get the updated contours by January, third Tuesday of January of 19, so that we have some time to review it before we get back into the board meeting.
Okay, so provide updated existing contours. What's the usual submittal date?
Yeah, let's say, third Tuesday of January, a month before this meeting,
Third.
or a month before mineral mining board meeting in February, whatever it is.
Do we have a calendar? I could just throw a date on it.
I got a calendar if you want a calendar. You want a
Say
date, the third,
15th, mid-January.
the third Tuesday is the 15th. The first is on a Tuesday.
15th.
January 15th. I think we're ready.
Then I would look for a motion.
Can I make the motion and propose the conditions?
Yes.
Okay, I'll make a motion to propose the following conditions for the mine. Yeah, here, I'll adjust this. Is this a little bit better? All right, so the first condition is to adopt, or not adopt, where did all mining activity to be completed by March 1st, 2019, ahead of a restoration permit. Second condition is to maintain the 30-foot buffer along the east property line, and that's to be maintained until restoration permit is approved. And the third condition is to provide updated existing contours by January 15th, 2019, to allow review ahead of the February Mining Review Board.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have support?
I'll support it.
We have support. Any final discussion? So we'll see this one again in February 19 to close it out, is the summary
For mining.
for mine. Okay, no further discussion, then all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, Mr. Schimmel, we will see you in February 2019. And we'll get you the report with the minutes so that you will have the motion that was approved here today. Okay? Thank you, folks. So it will be coming to a close here soon. Alrighty, let's see. Item 4 is approval of the minutes from March 26th of this year. Do we have a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion.
Do we have support?
I'll support.
We have support. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed. 26th of March approved for minutes. Second set of minutes from May 8th of 18. Do we have a motion to approve?
I didn't get the packet, so I can't help, sorry. I may have misplaced it, I never saw it.
I'll make the motion.
Dan makes the motion. Do we have support?
I'll support.
We have support. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed. So the minutes are approved for this year. We'll review these minutes in the February round of permit applications. Last thing we have, Tammy will not be here. Tammy is moving to DPW.
Where's your training? Where's your
Tammy's
trainee?
replacement will be here. All righty. Any further comments from the board?
Do we have to do a general public comment, just in general?
We could do a general public
I thought
comment
that was
if you
required
like.
for every meeting and it's on the agenda, so.
The-
Yeah, I don't think we did the
our
general.
Open Meeting Act watchdog is correct, and should we, I will make a spot on the agenda here for general public comment not related to items on the agenda. Anyone who has general comments, feel free to come on up to the podium.
Looks like we're good?
Yes.
Nope, we're not good.
We are good. Come on up to the podium. Feel free. Yep, that's good.
I just want to say, when we moved there in 1999, it was just such beautiful woods, and there was a bow and arrow club, and we used to cross-country ski out there, and we used to snowshoe, and so when we heard these trucks pulling all these trees out, we couldn't imagine what was going on. But I do want to say, I'm pleasantly surprised to know that you guys actually are keeping an eye on it, because, you know, we just look out the window, we go, what's he doing out there? Does anybody know? And he knows who the trespassers are. Our main concern is somebody's going to get hurt. We've seen little kids, this was early on, climbing up those hills. And the other thing is, when the offenders, they're out at night, because we can see the snowmobile lights out there. Our concern is someone's going to get hurt, and nobody's going to hear them yell out, or, I don't know. It's just, in the summertime, we can't see it. We can hear, but we can't see it, and it's fine. It's when the trees lose their leaves, that's when we can see the, looks like a bomb. But I'm glad to know it's coming to an end. And I just want to thank you for finally putting this to an end. I know Mr. Schimmel's a businessman. We can understand that. You know, we've worked in the public sector, and I'm just glad to know you're keeping an eye on it. I think I sent you some pictures a couple years ago.
Thank you.
And so we won't be at the February meeting because in 2 weeks, we're flying to Florida and we won't be home till May 1st. So, you know, I do have a question though. Doesn't that land freeze? I mean, how can they still mine that with,
Yeah,
in the cold weather?
Well, here's our engineering folks.
Yes,
Oh, okay.
they can.
I just wondered.
But there's just not a source to bring most of the time because there's not a lot of construction activity in like February. So they don't have as much volume to be moving in and out.
And as far as the noise goes, it's not that bad. It's kind of like living next to the railroad tracks. After a while, from what I hear, you don't even hear those trains. It's just become a fact of life. We pretty much ignore it. You know, it's not that bad, but it'd be nice to see some green out there and, you know, have a nice view.
The noises will change to golfers swearing.
Guys like
Oh,
this?
it's not open on Sundays.
There you go.
so That's kind of nice. But thank you very much for
Thank you.
letting us
Thank you.
speak. Appreciate it.
Okay, any further board comments? And I would look for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion.
Do we have support?
I'll support.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned at about 11:16.